There's a story of this family recipe, and mom's making it for her family, and she's got this great pot roast that she's making, and she cuts off the end of each side of the pot roast. And the family's like, you do that all the time, Mom. Why do you do that? It seems a little odd. She's like, I don't know. My mom always did it. So she went and asked her mom, and she said, I don't know. My mom always did it. So I went and asked the grandmom. She's like, well, I did that because my pan was too small. It wouldn't fit any other way. Sometimes we don't know why we do the things we do. What's the reason behind them? I mean, some of them kind of seem silly, don't they? Like stockings. Why do we put stockings on our fireplaces? What's the reason behind that? I think most of the time we don't even know, do we? So, what's the history? What's the reason? Why do we do the things we do? I think to understand stockings, we've got to go back to the third century. There was a man by the name of Nicholas. He grew up in a wealthy family in what's now modern day Turkey. His parents passed away when he was fairly young. And when they did, he decided to give away all of their wealth. And so he gave it to everybody in his town, the needy who were in his town. At the age of 17, he became a monk. And then shortly after that, he became a priest. And really shortly after that, he became an archbishop. In his young 20s, he was an archbishop in the church, something pretty unheard of. But this man's life was marked by generosity. And so one day, as he's traveling around as the archbishop, he hears of a family in need. Honestly, there were a lot of families in need. But this particular family was made up of a father who was a widower and three daughters. And they didn't know where their next meal was going to come from. They lived so poorly, they didn't even know if they were going to survive. And so the father, he came up with a plan. He decided if I sell my oldest daughter into slavery, I can use that money to have enough money for the dowries for my two youngest daughters. And then they can get married and they can get out of the cycle of poverty, and I can provide at least for some of my daughters that way. And so he got it all set up. But when it came time to actually sell his daughter to slavery, he couldn't do it. I mean, how could you do it? So he, that night, was just so dejected, still not knowing what would come of his family, a little guilty that he had wanted to do this, not knowing where the next meal was going to come from. And he just prayed that God would provide for them. And so that night before bed, they do what they did every night. They washed their clothes, they hung them up, particularly their stockings for the next day, because that's all they had. They had to wash them each night, otherwise they would have nothing to wear the next day. We live in a land of plenty. We've got closets full of clothes. I've got a ton of socks, probably too many socks, and they're fun. And I like them, but I probably should. It's probably too much, right? But for them, that was it. One pair of stockings per person. That was all they had. And so they washed them, they hung them, they were drying. It wasn't a Christmas thing, it was an everyday thing. And to be honest, in the history of the world, even in the United States, it's only more recently that we have more than enough. But may this be a reminder to us that there's plenty in this world that don't have enough. So their stockings were hung, and Nicholas came by that night, and he put a gold piece in one of the stockings. The oldest daughter found it the next day, took it to her dad, and he praised God for providing for them. It was enough for a dowry for the oldest daughter to get married. Once she was married, there's a gold piece that showed up in another stocking. And then after she was married, a gold piece for the youngest daughter. And all three daughters were married. They were able to live a life that wasn't in complete poverty. And God provided for this family. And the father rejoiced and praised God for that. Now, there were also some people in town that realized that those gold pieces also happened to show up every time Nicholas was in town. And Nicholas was also known for being greatly generous. And so as word spread, people would try to make their stockings a little bit more available, particularly when Nicholas was in town. And God does use people, by the way, right? God used Nicholas to help answer that father's prayer. And so every once in a while, there would be things that showed up in stockings. Sometimes it was a piece of candy, sometimes something else, sometimes it was other people doing it. But this story had spread among this region so much that when Nicholas passed away on December the 6th, I think probably around 350 AD, not really sure the year, but know for sure the date, December the 6th. They remembered Nicholas every year on that day by putting stockings out and by putting things in stockings, usually something small, candy or something like that. Uh, but that was the tradition. Now, how did that go from that tradition to Christmas? And so for a long time, it was just a way to remember his generosity. Until 1823, there was a poem that came out that we know by the title as The Night Before Christmas. And what happens in that poem? It says, the stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. And so in that poem, we get the St. Nicholas story emerge with what Christmas had become by that point in time in history. And so now we have stockings that are a part of the Christmas celebration. Still at that point, we're still talking about socks, right? Like something that somebody would take down and actually put on their feet the next day. Yeah, but over the course of time, we've made the stockings bigger in hopes that bigger things would be put in them. And so maybe in our celebration of Christmas, this is taking the opposite meaning, right? Is it in some ways become a more selfish thing? What can I get out of this kind of deal? And so my encouragement is that when we see stockings, may they be a reminder to us to be selfless. And may they be a reminder to us to be generous to others. So at the church, we have a couple ways we can do that. Right now, our women on mission are collecting gift cards to give to families who are in need, who might not have enough this year. Those gift cards, those families can use to buy gifts for their kids if they want. They can use them to buy food if they need to. But whatever kind of gift card you would like to give to some families in need, I encourage you to do that. By this Sunday, December the 13th, I encourage you to bring some gift cards up to the church. Another opportunity is we're helping feed families in the Alvin area. And we do that at the Episcopal Church. They have a feeding station that a number of different churches and the Houston Food Bank go together to put on. And so if you want to help join us in that, there's an opportunity to do that this Thursday, December the 10th, from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, or the following Saturday. You can help give out food. But we'd love for you to be a part of one of those days as well, so we can give food and help provide for families in our area. Another way to provide and to be generous during this time is to support the Lottie Moon offering for foreign missions. And what that money does is it goes to help support missionaries that go throughout the world to share the gospel with people, to share the good news with people. We need to be people who are generous and give to meet physical needs and give to meet spiritual needs during this time of year. So my hope and my prayer is that stockings will be something that's not about our own selfishness, but our selflessness. That every time we pass by and see one, they will encourage us to live generously during this time of the year and always.